Hello again, composition people. This is week 10, and we're doing chapter 7 today, which is entitled Explanations and Excuses. Before we get into that, the CQI period is closing now because we're halfway through the semester. Nobody gave me any feedback from this class, so I'm going to assume everything is going perfectly. Right? No, I'm just kidding. I know everybody, not everybody, but there have been some students asking certain things like the lecture summaries to be posted. And in this class, I think that's very fair because conversation, listening element is not as important. So week 9, the lecture summary is not up yet. It's partly because there's so many things going on. Honestly, I've been behind this entire semester, so I apologize. It should be up faster, but the students who were emailing me weeks ago sort of stopped doing that, and hopefully you understand. But it will come up, so please just wait a couple days, and I will do this one faster this week. The reality is, there's a new cluster of infections, and so my kids went back to school last week, and this week they're at home again, and this prevents me. I'm not a stay-at-home dad, I'm a professor, but it really interferes with my ability to do work during the day, so I can only stay up so late at night. So I apologize, but it's a real excuse, and I think it's ironic that the chapter this week is excuses. So I do understand you too. If you don't hand in something for a legitimate reason, if you have a good excuse. One student actually last week handed in their assignment at exactly 12 o'clock, and I said, if it's 1 minute late, then you're going to get a penalty. But I wasn't serious, just so you know. But if you hand something in at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the due date is the day before by midnight, it's late. But if you hand it in at 12:05, I'll let it go. And I mean, you shouldn't be late for class too, but if it's raining and you come in 10 minutes late, I'm not going to mark you late on your attendance. I'm not that type of person. I'm trying to be strict so that you'll meet the deadlines, because I know doing writing at the last minute is not helpful. So anyway, there's my pep talk. There has been some positive feedback in this class, which I appreciate, but you're welcome to tell me if some students have told me that links are not working on the website, or that the date that I wrote down was wrong or something, and that information is very welcome and legitimate, so don't feel that I'm going to judge you or be offended. If you're telling me something that needs to be improved, I will do it as quickly as I can. So, let's see. More news. This weekend is our makeup class for, this writing's tiny. It's from way back in March 12th. The second week of class, we skipped the first 2 weeks of class, so this weekend is our second makeup weekend. So that's going to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I've opened up the lecture for 4 days, so you will watch this lecture tomorrow, which is Thursday, and then over the weekend, please log in and watch the makeup lecture for March 12th. Did I get that right? March 12th. And that will be our last makeup lecture, and that will be week 11. Okay? So please do that. Also, I asked you to do some homework. I do expect you to watch the whole video lecture and pay attention, so that's one of the reasons why the lecture summary doesn't go up immediately, because this is supposed to be your class time, listening to me. I know you probably would be much more stimulated and more entertained if we were in the classroom and you saw me in person and we could I could ask questions and some students could put their hands up and answer, but we can't do that. So you are expected to actually sit there and look at me and watch what I'm saying and digest it. So again, let me tell you again, reinforce the fact that tomorrow there's a textbook assignment due by the end of the day based on the fact or opinion exercises on page 43 and 44. I told you last week in the lecture, but I'm telling you again, just to remind you, you shouldn't be sending me emails about that kind of stuff because it's clearly been stated in the lecture, right? Okay, I think that covers everything. For this class, this is my home territory really, because when I studied English, the emphasis was on writing, not speaking, because most university programs for English literature focus on reading and writing. Presentation skills and speaking are secondary, and we don't develop them a whole lot, although my Shakespeare class asked us to perform a Shakespeare play, but that was more of a shock to everyone because we were used to writing essays. So this is my main experience from way back when I was 20 years old, when I was undergrad too. So it's always comfortable for me to come back here. Also, the fact that when we do composition class, there's less talking in class, and we had to change this class less because going online just meant that your writing would be digital and my lecturing would be digital, and that's all there was to it. Also, I never planned on having a midterm because that's not what my professors did in Canada either. Whenever I had a class that involved essay writing, we wrote papers. We didn't have a midterm. There was a final, but instead of a midterm, there would be a paper. So remember, like I said, you handed in a graded assignment last week on Thursday, which I'm going through them slowly, and I will give you a grade and email you back about each one. It takes a long time to get through them, but I think that's the most valuable thing in this class is the experience of writing a paper, practicing, and then getting evaluated so that you can improve. Lucky for all of you, the grade curve has been relaxed quite a bit. So, like I said, 50% A's, 50% B's and below, and it's just a matter of your effort. So you don't need to. Some people are freaking out about being a day late. It's at this point, everybody's trying to understand how difficult it is to be doing things online. So just don't overreact. Just make an effort. Don't cheat. Use references and follow the instructions, and you will get a good grade. That's all you have to do. Okay. So let's continue. Like I said, today the topic is explanations and excuses. So I'll read to you the paragraph here. And as I said before, these paragraphs, I do not think they are meant to be perfect. They're meant to be examples for you to. You can imitate the good parts about it, and you can criticize the things about it that you think don't make sense. This is a great textbook for practical purposes. So this is what it says. And probably you can all identify with this, and I can too because I was a student too. The title is "It Wasn't My Fault!" ! Now, you're not supposed to put punctuation in the title, so that's the first problem. Like I said, I think Dorothy Zimak was very aware that these examples do have flaws, and she's expecting you to point them out and deal with them. And this will be part of the exam too. We'll talk about that later. Professors should be understanding when students can't complete assignments on time. I couldn't do the writing homework for English class today, and my professor didn't want to hear my reasons. Well, that's not good. You should at least listen to the reasons. I had good reasons too. Last night was Evan's birthday. He's my best friend, so I had to go to his party. After the party, I tried to do the homework, but my computer froze, and I lost all the information. I was too tired, and probably drunk, although it doesn't say that, to write it again because it was very late. My professor didn't care. She said, "You had 2 weeks to do the assignment, so there are no excuses. I think she's angry with me, but it wasn't my fault." Yeah, that's not, I think in English we would say that's a hard sell. A hard sell. That's a difficult thing to get somebody to buy. I had a car accident. It was raining, so the traffic was terrible, and I'm late for class. I had a death in the family. I was sick and in the hospital. There's lots of good reasons and good excuses, but I went out with my friend because it was his birthday, and that was something, I had a technical problem, but I ran out of time, so I just went to sleep. I don't know any professors that would accept that excuse. So that's a stretch. So it was. The title is, sort of a protest, right? It wasn't my fault, but it really was. Right, so there's a few questions. The writer didn't do his homework because it was his best friend's birthday? Yes. He is lazy? Yes. He's unorganized? Yes. He had a computer problem? Yes. He isn't a serious student? Yes. There's not one reason, there's 5. This is the professor's perspective. I think the student would say the 2 reasons, A and D, but from the professor's perspective, the professor's gonna, from the professor's point of view, it's going to be laziness, not being organized, and not being serious. And now I'm on the other side. Of course, I share the professor's opinion. So, that's why I give you more time to do every assignment, and that's why you get a whole week to log in, not just 2 hours to log in and get credit for the class, because all kinds of things can go wrong. So if you leave things to the last minute, then excuses are less valid, right? Because that's what happens. So don't leave it to the last minute, and then you won't have to, try and make excuses. That's the way it works. So the whole chapter, that's the name of the chapter, but I think it's not a great name for our lecture today. So I've changed the name. The lecture for week 10 is called Connectors, because the rest of the chapter, the main part of the chapter, is dealing with reasons or excuses. An excuse is a type of reason in order to get somebody to understand you. So this is why I wrote excuses and reasons here, because the rest of the chapter just gives you examples of how to use because or so. So they give you 2 sentences which are simple, and there's a relationship between them based on cause and effect or causality. If you put depending on the order, you can use because or so. As in page 50, the example, it says, "The movie was boring, I left early." And the relationship is by cause, so the reason comes second, right? The movie was boring. Sorry, the reason comes first. The movie was boring, I left early, right? So you're saying what you did second, and you're saying the reason first. And in that case, you would use the conjunction so. The movie was boring, so I left early. If you want to use because, then you have to say the action first, and then you have to say the reason second. I left early because the movie was boring, which is normally that's the more common way of expressing it. Because is one of the most common words in the English language, because you say action and you say reason. But if you say reason and then action, then you can use so. It doesn't matter. It does matter. It's a choice that you make, but I think it's natural to say what happened, like the action, and then defend yourself next, rather than stating the reason first and then the action afterwards. That's the way our minds usually work, because if somebody says why, then you say action because, right? So I think that's pretty easy. This is composition 1, but I'm not going to assign this. I'll give you the week off. You don't have to do any homework this week. This will allow me to catch up on the things that you've handed in, and it'll give you a little break. Usually after midterms, professors do, you know, give themselves a chance to catch up and give the students a break. So you don't have to do any homework, but just so you know, page 50 and 51 are great. I mean, they're basic, but they're good, solid examples of how to use those two conjunctions effectively. All right, now what I have written here is transitions and conjunctions, and I always kind of feel bad because I don't give this lecture until you've already handed in a graded assignment, but it's just the way, you know, the course works out, that this topic doesn't come up until this point in the book. This is why in previous years sometimes I've jumped from chapter 1 to chapter 7 and chapter 3, but there's already too much going on this semester, so I didn't try to do that because it would just be confusing for everyone, especially me. So we're here, and at this point in the class, I usually talk about all linking words and transition words and conjunction words, not just, you know, and but, which we did earlier, which are related to addition and exception, or because and so, which are the four main ones that we emphasize in this class. And if you can understand how to use those four, and but, because and so, then you have a foundation for making more complicated sentences, which is, I know some students have written more and some have written less, but, you know, please understand that it's composition 1. Some students have better English skills, and some people have developing ones, and some people have more writing experience, and some people have less. So sometimes I get comments, none this semester, but sometimes I get comments saying, well, this class is too easy. But sometimes I get comments saying the class is too hard. So it's tough. Remember that I have to try and include as many students as possible when I'm teaching this. So this is the thing about these words, is that if you're going to develop your writing to the point where you can write something longer than one paragraph, and in one paragraph this is important too, especially conjunctions, because I said, and I've seen simple sentences of a short number of words, like 3 minimum, but anywhere from 3 to like 6 or 7 words, they don't express the relationship between ideas as well as complex sentences do. And I don't mean that you have to have a sentence that's 25 words, because that can get too complicated and confusing. But you know, a phrase with a conjunction and another phrase is natural even when you're speaking. And so when you're writing and you write sentences that are too short, which we looked briefly at in a previous chapter, you end up sounding like you sound like a simplistic person. I don't want to say that means you're not smart, but it does look like your ideas are not connected, and it looks like your writing hasn't developed enough, so maybe you can't express at the higher level. So some students make they try to make sentences that are too complicated, and that's not good, because that interferes with being concise, and that interferes with coherence. And some students try to use, you know, really big words, and I was one of those students. I was not an ESL student. I'm Canadian, so English is my first language. But I at some point when I was younger, I thought bigger words were better. But really, that it's not a bigger word. I've said before, it's a precise word. You need to use a word that's accurate and precise, and you need to use the right combination of words. You don't need to find a word that nobody's heard before, and try and stick it into a sentence to make your essay better, what you need to do is have the right kind of connectors, and you need to, choose words that express more exactly what you're trying to say, which doesn't involve how obscure the word is or how big it is. It has nothing to do with it. So transitions and conjunctions, they can make you sound smart, and you have to be careful about these words too, because there are certain words that essays tend to, people who write essays tend to use more. I got in the habit of saying furthermore and moreover and additionally over and over again in my papers, and that's not really meaningful, or it doesn't add anything to your paper either. But if you do have the ability to sort of use different options, then it does, I think, add something to, first of all, it's not as repetitive or boring when somebody's reading it. And essays, the worst, one of the biggest dangers of an essay is it being boring. So you don't want to add any extra boring things. You want to make it as interesting as possible within its limits. So I do have, I have a link for you to click on, which is on the website, and there is a PDF that you can download if you want to, and it's sort of like a reference sheet. This is it. You won't be able to see it very well, but this is it here. You can see there's a ridiculous number of words here, but this is probably the best list that I've found for the purposes of teaching, because it's very comprehensive and it's free. But I linked the website because they allow you to download it for free. But since I own my own website and manage it, I understand that traffic through your website is something that allows you to get a tiny little bit of money, perhaps, to pay for the cost of running the website. So rather than giving you the PDF, you will have to go to the actual website, which is www.smartwords.org. But all you have to do is click on the link from week 10 and read what they say. It's talking about smart words, and then scroll down about a page length, and you will see that there's a PDF you can download, which is transitions and conjunctions in 2 pages. And if you feel like downloading it or printing it to help you choose words to help you improve your writing, then this is why I'm showing it to you. So basically, you can choose any of these words. It's a stylistic choice, but there are categories of words, and they're based on the relationship between the ideas. So, like I said, when you talk about and, when you use the word, the conjunction and, then you're taking 2 ideas and you're saying these can be added together. And when you say but, then you're subtracting. You could say that, but I like to use the word exception. So this is the rule, but this case is different. So that's an exception. That's how but works. Or you can say although, or there's other options too. And then when you use so or because, the relationship is this happened, and the reason why it happened is this thing. So you put because or so in between those 2 ideas. So the categories that they give you on this, I think quite comprehensive and useful list of transitions and conjunctions is, the first one is agreement, addition, or similarity. So this includes, as a matter of fact, in addition, and, also, then, equally, identically, like, as, to. Now you have to be careful. Remember, and is not the same as identically. Identically means exactly the same. And means sort of 1 plus 1. So they're in the same category, but you can't always substitute one word for another. So be aware of that. It may help you to look things up in the dictionary. I always suggest the same thing that my French teacher suggested, that if you look up a word from Korean to English, or whatever language, Chinese to English, or or whatever language you're using to understand, use that first and get the idea, or use it the other way. If you're looking in your own language and you're translating to English, then also look at the English only dictionary and look at the other words and look at the context and the examples. And then there's less danger of you using the word improperly, because this is what we did in French classes. We didn't know a word, so you look it up in the English-French dictionary and you find a bunch of words, and then you look it up in the French dictionary, and the French dictionary gives you more specific information. So I recommend that to you. I don't think I've said that this semester, but it's very helpful for you to just look up a word in your own language, find some words in English that are options, and then look up that word in the English-only dictionary and try to get a sense of how it works from the English dictionary, and then you prevent, the use of the word inappropriately. Okay, so the second category is examples, support, or emphasis. And you've got a ton of different examples. In this case, for this reason, to put it another way, that is to say, including, like, namely, chiefly, truly, indeed, you get the idea. I'm not going to read the whole thing here. The next category is consequence, like as a result, or thus, or then, therefore, consequently. Opposition or contradiction, or exception, but, unlike, or, while, albeit, besides, even though. On the other hand, on the contrary, like I said, this is pretty great. It's got a lot of options. Next, cause, condition, or purpose. If, then, when, whenever, since, while, because, lest, in case, provided, so that, in the event that. There's so many phrases and single words. Then you have location or place, which is here, there, next, where, from, over, near, above, and so on. Time, chronology, sequence, after, later, last, until, till, since, then, before, hence. I know I'm going really fast, but if you want to see what I'm talking about, you can download, or you can just go to the website. So the final transition section is conclusion, summary, restatement, and all of these words are very useful for essays and also for your paragraphs, but in the future for essays. Finally, at the last section, they've got the conjunctions, comparison, concession, condition, time, place, manner, and reason. That's the whole list. On the exam, there will be sentences that you need to assemble, combine, to make more complex sentences. And you can use any of these, but like I said, the main emphasis is on and, but, because, or so. Okay? So the relationship between the ideas in the individual sentences will need to be considered, and you may need to make a grammatical sentence out of the sentences I provide you, just like in the textbook. Okay? Now again, there's no homework, so you don't have to do those exercises, but just be aware that on the exam there will be a section where I put 2 or 3 sentences that are related to each other, and you need to take away the punctuation, take away any unnecessary words, and then use conjunctions and commas, punctuation and conjunctions, to make more complex sentences so that I can see that you're developing your sentence structure. That's the point. And so this will improve your writing in general, okay? Now the last part of the chapter is about free writing again. And I want to mention that there are 3 parts in the exam. The first part of the exam is short answer. So that will include, one part of that will be combining sentences, and there'll be other parts. The second section, part B, is to look at paragraphs and analyze them and show both your comprehension and your ability to, recognize, the good points, the strong points and the weaknesses of a paragraph. So the first part is short answer. The second part of the exam will be analyzing paragraphs, paragraph analysis. And the last part of the exam is you will have to write a paragraph on a topic that I provide. And there'll be a choice of 4 different topics, and you'll choose one, and then you'll have to write a paragraph. And that will be the last section. And you'll probably have about 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes to write your paragraph. So it is essentially free writing. The last part of this chapter is again talking about free writing. So when you see the topic, what you have to do is look at the topic, brainstorm an idea, narrow it down to something manageable for a 30-minute writing exercise, something that you can write a paragraph about. Narrow down the topic, organize your ideas, and this should only take 5 minutes to go through this process. Choose a topic, brainstorm, organize, write. And you don't have time to rewrite or edit or fix, so it's essentially free writing. And I know it's not that fun because I've done it. I had to write, actually, my exams were sometimes 3 hours, and I had to write multiple essay questions, and sometimes my exam was just 20 pages of my writing. And by the end, I sometimes had no idea what I was writing about, or whether it was connected to the beginning. And once you write for that long and you can't feel your fingers, then you hand it in and you hope for the best. But really, what I would like you to do is not to hesitate too much in starting to write, but just get comfortable in writing and trying to make sure each sentence is connected to the next one, so that you don't struggle to complete that. Because when I practice this in class, and we do paragraph writing in class, the biggest problem is students thinking about what they're going to write and having trouble organizing their ideas. And by the time the 30-minute timer is up, they've barely started. And I mean, there's a time limit to the exam. So since we can't practice this in class, I really would encourage you. I doubt many students are going to do this, but it's a different kind of writing when you're under pressure and you have to write in 30 or 40 minutes. You have to write your paragraph. When I ask you to hand in a paragraph or a paper that's 1 page long, you can take a week to do it, or you can take 3 hours in the middle of the night. If you start at 1 o'clock in the morning, you can just write until you're done. But in the exam, you can't. So writing under pressure is hard, but I think it's important because occasionally it has to happen. And I mean, it's a skill, and it's a test to see. There's no research involved. There's no cheating possible. It's you and your pencil and your paper and 30 minutes, and you show me how well you can write. So, I mean, I'm very forgiving about grammar mistakes, and you should know that you don't need to think that your spelling needs to be perfect or anything, but the fundamental things that you learned in this class should be demonstrated in that 30 or 40 minutes in the exam. That's what I'm looking for, and that's what the end of this chapter 7 is about sitting down and writing writing without stopping until it's done. Okay, so on page 54 it says, choose one of these topics, make a word map or free write. Don't make a word map, forget that. Just choose one of these topics. I encourage you to do this, but it's not required, but it's a good exercise. Just choose one of these topics, and you have to give reasons. The topics are a time that you were late, an accident, a mistake, or claiming that it wasn't your fault, blaming somebody else. You can choose other topics too, but if you skip the brainstorming part, other than just, okay, I got a few ideas, and then write a paragraph, just see how long it takes you, and if you have some issues with whatever, whatever get stuck at the beginning or you can't think of how to organize it, then practice makes perfect. That's what you need to do. Also, some students start writing notes or start writing in their own language, and then they start translating it over into English. I think that's not helpful. One, because it interferes with the development of your English ability down the road, but it's also a waste of time in the situation because time is precious when you're in an exam. So that's my advice for preparing yourself for Part C, the paragraph writing on the exam. And of course, there'll be more information forthcoming. My plan is to, in all of the classes, in week 14, do exam review. And this will be just the last class, the last online lecture that I have. Will just be me telling you this page is important, this point is important, please remember this is what's going to be on the exam, so this will help you prepare. So don't, some people are not stressed out at all, some people are just cruising, and some people are concerned. But don't worry, there's a lot of material in all of the classes that has to be covered, and I'm not expecting you to remember everything I've said the whole semester, but you do have the ability to look at everything I've said from the very beginning. It's all available on the channel. So if you've taken good notes, you don't really have to look back. But if you haven't, and you're like any other normal student and you're cramming for your exam, then you can just pull up week 5 and watch it again and pay attention to the things I emphasize. Okay? So this is week 10, makeup lecture week 11. We got a couple more weeks after that, and then week 14 we'll do review, and week 15 is the exam. Okay? So, as I said, there is sort of a new cluster of cases, unfortunately, that's sort of based on people's contact in Itaewon. Again, unfortunately, some people are concerned about foreigners in particular or other people who have certain lifestyles. I haven't been to Itaewon in about 3 years, despite the fact that I'm a foreigner. So, and you're only looking at me through the screen, so you don't have to worry about me. But if you were in Itaewon or other people that were, I suggest that you be careful over the next week as we see how much the virus has spread. So please, I know you want to go outside and enjoy yourself, as do I. The weather's beautiful, but please be careful and be responsible and be safe. Thank you for listening. Have a good night.